Hi everyone, I'm Po Fan Yu, a master student in National Yangming Jiao Tong University. Today I will be talking about the weighted area-based alignment metric for redirected walking in virtual reality. This research is under the supervision of Professor Ronghong Zhang. In VR locomotion, there are several techniques that allow users to explore virtual environment. Among them, natural walking offers better sense of presence and improving spatial awareness. However, natural walking also has a challenge, since the layout of the physical and virtual environment are often different. Users may easily collide with obstacles in the physical space. One effective solution is redirected walking, a technique that subtly steers the user to prevent collision while still preserving the benefit of natural walking. So far, many redirection controllers have been proposed. Early ones, like steer to center, simply steer the user toward the center of a physical space. For recent controllers, artificial potential field, which calculate repulsive force from obstacle and guide the user toward more open areas. Another improved family is alignment-based controller. The intuition here is straightforward. If the walkable area in a physical and virtual environment are well aligned, user can move more freely and avoid collisions. Other studies also combine or switch between different RDW techniques depending on the current situation in order to improve performance. Now that we have looked at alignment-based controllers in general, let me dive deeper into two representative approaches, the visibility polygon and the alignment optimize. For a visibility polygon controller, the first step is to compute the visibility polygons for both the physical and virtual environment, and then divide them into slices based on the layout. Next, the controller uses shape similarity metric to find a physical slice that best matches the user's current virtual slice. The shape similarity metric here is based on the polygonal area. However, this design has a drawback. Because the slices may have different inscribed angles, two slices can have the same area but very different shape. This often degrades the alignment performance. As for the alignment optimize, we use a fixed inscribed angle that is symmetry to the user's heading to define both the virtual cell and the physical cell from their respective visibility polygons. These two cells are then overlap, and the ratio of the overlapping region is used as an alignment metric. Although these two controllers differ in how they construct and compare their regions, both ultimately rely on polygonal area to measure the alignment. Using polygonal area as an alignment metric seems straightforward, however, this approach has a key limitation. Polygons with the same area can still have very different shapes. As a result, the controller might treat two directions as equally good, even though one direction is much riskier. To overcome this, we introduced a new approach called a weighted area. Instead of treating all polygons with the same area as equivalent, we subdivide the walkable region into small units and assign different weights to them, based on certain assumptions or additional information. This way, the controller can better distinguish which regions are more important for safe walking. This slide shows why having the same area but different shape can lead to very different RDW performance. In this example, all three cases have the same physical and virtual areas, and even the overlap between them is identical. However, if the controller chooses the case on the right, the user is much more likely to hit obstacles, and the chance of triggering a reset becomes much higher compared to the other two cases. So this is a contribution part. So we have the three main contributions. First, we propose a weighted area scheme and apply this scheme to the existing alignment optimize, called the alignment optimize weighted area AD controller. Second, we integrate alignment and APF information into a unified controller, called the alignment optimize weighted area AD plus APF. And for simplicity, I will just call them the AD version and the AD plus APF version. Finally, we conduct a simulation-based evaluation comparing these two controllers against the state-of-the-art method. Now let me explain the design of the weighted area. Given a polygon capital P, along with the user's position and heading, we subdivide the polygon into many small unit areas. If we don't assign any special weight, the polygonal area can simply be approximated by summing up all these units. If we use the weighted area approach, then the polygonal area is no longer just the sum of the unit areas. Instead, each unit is passed through a weighting function, and the weighted values are summed together to form a weighted area of the polygon. For each unit, its weight depends on two factors: the distance from the user and the angle between the user's heading and the vector pointing to the unit center. These two factors are processed through the function W angle and W distance, and the products give the final weight of the unit. After computing the weight of all units, we sum them up to obtain the weighted area of the polygon. The formulation of W angle is based on a simple assumption. Users are more likely to move straight ahead. As shown in the left graph, unit area closer to the heading direction receive higher weight. And for a W distance, we assume the likelihood of reaching a unit decreases as the distance grows. So the farther the unit is from the user, the smaller its weight, as illustrated in the right graph. And both functions just follow a standard normal distribution. We normalize the angle and distance to roughly 3 standard deviations and then use the function to assign weight accordingly. The weighted area formulation could also incorporate additional information for redirected walking. One example is the APF value at the unit center, which indicates how open the surrounding space is. In the APF S2T definition, a higher value means the unit is closer to obstacles, while a lower value means the area is more open. But in our approach, we want more open regions to have higher importance, so we invert the APF function, and we also square the value to scale the weight, since summing over many units can smooth out APF differences. Finally, by multiplying APF star with W angle and W distance, we obtain a new weighting function for each unit, and summing this gives the weighted area of the polygon with APF included. Now that we have introduced the weighted area design, let's look how we implement in the alignment optimize. But first, let me briefly review how alignment optimize works. So we begin by computing the visibility polygon, VPP and VPV, for user position in the physical and virtual environment. Using the user's heading direction, we then define the physical cell, CP, and the virtual cell, CV. Next, we overlay the virtual cell onto the physical environment and evaluate their overlap. Formally, the CP theta is a physical cell rotated by an angle theta relative to the user's heading, and the CV theta is a virtual cell after the alignment. The objective function is designed so that the more the two cells overlap, the lower its value. So by minimizing this objective function, we find the optimal steering angle theta star. And the theta star is then used to define curvature, rotation, and translation gain to steer the user. After explaining how the alignment optimized controller works, let's see how we integrate the weighted area approach. The integration is actually very straightforward. In the original objective function, we just simply replace the polygonal area calculation with the weighted area formulation I just introduced. And this leads to two new controllers, the AD version, which use only angle and distance weighting, and the AD plus APF version, which additionally incorporate APF information. And both versions optimize their objective function to determine the steering direction, and then use this direction to set RDW gains to subtle steering. For our experiment, we set up 6 hypotheses. Hypothesis 1 to 4 state that our weighted area controller are expected to outperform existing alignment-based and APF-based controllers. The 5th hypothesis is that the AD plus APF version, which integrate both alignment and APF information, will perform better than the alignment plus APF optimize. And finally, the 6th hypothesis predicts that AD plus APF version will also outperform the AD version. To test our hypothesis, we construct 6 environment pairs by combining 3 physical layouts and 2 virtual environments. All physical spaces have the same overall size, but they differ in the obstacle layout. For each environment pair, we generate 100 walking paths using a trajectory model with a straight segment and turns to simulate realistic walking. Let's take a look at the result. The blue bars represent the AD version, and the orange bars represent the AD plus APF version. The marks above the bars show where the differences between our controllers and other methods are statistically significant. Across all 6 environment pairs, both versions consistently outperform the state-of-the-art controllers, including alignment and APF-based, and even the alignment plus APF optimized. The reduction in reset count was clear and significant, supporting hypothesis 1 to 5. As for the hypothesis 6, the AD plus APF version had lower median reset count than the AD version in every environment, but the difference was significantly only in environment pairs 1 and 4. We believe this is due to how APF is integrated. When the APF values are multiplied by angle and distance weight, their influence becomes weaker for far or off-angle regions. And in addition, obstacle density plays an important role. In more cluttered space, reset can still occur quickly, which explains the partial improvement. There are still some limitations to our approach. First, our method assumes that the user prefers to move forward, which may not hold in scenarios with frequent turns. Second, our evaluation was entirely simulation-based. While simulation provide useful insight, live user studies are essential for validation and to understand the effect of the subjective metrics such as the simulated thickness and cognitive load. Finally, our controllers require prior knowledge of the physical and virtual environment layout, which is not always available in real-world settings. To conclude, we introduced a weighted area alignment metric that better distinguishes walkable regions of the same area but different shapes. And based on this metric, we proposed two new controllers, the alignment optimized weighted area AD and the alignment optimized weighted area AD plus APF. Simulation results show that both controllers outperform the existing alignment and APF-based controller in terms of the reset reduction and walking continuity. This demonstrates that the weighted area approach is a promising direction for improving alignment-based redirected walking. And thank you for your attention. This is the end of my presentation.
Yeah, thank you for the great presentation. And is there any question from the floor? If not, yeah, I have a question. So, in terms of using it in a real time for the real user case, what do you think was going to be the most difference from like just conducting evaluation with the simulation one? What if we conducted with the real user experiment?
Sorry, can you say a little bit?
Yeah. So, when you conduct this experiment to the user, what do you think you should consider more compared to just using the simulation for the evaluation?
Like for the user study, we still need to consider the subjective metrics. And yes, maybe that we didn't talk much about the gains since that is another important in the redirected walking, like something like rotation, translation, and curvature. And this have the like max angle, like in rotation, you need to consider when you have a serious returns for the user.
Thank you. Is there any other questions? If not, let's move on to the next question. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you for the introduction. Hello, I'm Habiba Abdelaziz, and today I'm presenting our paper titled Have a Seat, an enhanced reactive alignment of a single target's position and angle from user's perspective in VR. And this work was done in Nara Institute of Science and Technology in Japan. So the problem we are discussing today is how to traverse a virtual environment that is much larger than the available physical environment. And to solve this problem, redirected walking technique was suggested by Razak et al. In 2001. Essentially how it works is that it rotates the virtual environment around the user's head without them noticing to allow them to naturally explore a much larger virtual environment with walking. This is achieved by something called gains, and we have mainly three types of gains. We have translation, rotation, and curvature gain. Curvature gain makes the user walk on curved path in the physical environment while they think they are walking straight line in the virtual one. Each gain has max and min values that either suppresses or exaggerates the motion in the virtual environment compared to the motion in the physical one. So since its initial conception in 2001, redirected walking techniques have undergone significant evolution. So going through basic ones like steer to center and steer to orbit, then saccadic redirection, artificial potential field, then finally reinforcement-based learning techniques. The one we're focusing on today are saccadic and APF. So redirected walking techniques apply the rotations while the user's eyes are wide open. But research have found that extra rotations can be induced during saccadic suppression. So a saccade is an event where the user moves their fixation point from one area to another. And the research have also shown that it can be successfully integrated with redirected walking techniques like steer to center and steer to orbit. And then artificial potential field was first used in redirected walking in 2019 by Bachmann et al. And Thomas et al. Decided to use it to handle irregular physical environments. So a regular physical environment is an environment with a convex shape with no obstacles in it. However, irregular ones include ones with non-convex boundaries and ones that have obstacles in them. So the artificial potential field are essentially a potential function that spans the whole physical environment, and you have the boundaries and obstacles. They have high potential, while the goal points or the empty areas have low potential. And when you compute the negative gradient of that, you get a resultant vector that points away from obstacles and towards the empty areas in the physical environment. And this can be used to redirect the user to these points. So redirected walking APF-based ones are great, and they allow users to walk around and explore the environment. But if they can also get haptic feedback, passive haptic feedback, it can significantly increase their sense of presence in the virtual environment. And so starting 2005, researchers started integrating passive haptic feedback with redirected walking techniques. Like Cole et al., he had one real pedestal representing 5 virtual ones, and he would redirect the user to the real pedestal while they were walking towards the virtual one. And then in 2020, Thomas et al. Decided to utilize the APF to support physical interactions with the environment. And this is done using a potential function. So you have the attractive component and you have the repulsive component. And this would create a vector that is always pointing towards the our physical target. In this case, it's a chair. And yeah, and then this would help the user to go towards the physical target. So the reactive alignment proposed by Thomas et al. Was working well. However, it did not consider the angular misalignment of the targets. So while the position or the physical distance error was minimized, their angle was completely misaligned. And our choice of the target being a chair in this case was to highlight the importance of angular alignment. So in the original reactive alignment, the direction in which the user is redirected was purely based on the resultant vector without considering the alignment error between the targets, especially the angular error. So in our proposed method, we still utilize the same vector, the same potential function. However, we structured the revised reactive alignment in a way that divides responsibilities. So you have the rotation gain and the translation gain focused on fixing the alignment and angular alignment error, while the curvature gain is still dedicated to avoidance, to avoid collision. And in parallel, you have the saccadic and the blink detection running to induce further rotations and enhance the angular alignment even more. Before we dive in to details, we first needed some redefinitions. So first, in the angular alignment in previous work was defined as the difference in angle between the user's forward direction and the physical targets, the black one, forward direction. When the user finally arrives at the virtual target, highlighted in orange. But in this case, by this definition, angular error would be 0, but you can see that the virtual object is not in the right angle. So instead, we suggested delta perspective angle and misalignment angle. So delta P is the difference between the physical perspective angle and virtual perspective angle, which is the angle at which the user is viewing each target, respectively. And delta M is the difference between the vectors from the user to each target, respectively. And our goal is to minimize those two, delta P and delta M. From the user's point of view, this is how it looks like. So you can see here, in this case, the delta P is 0, which means the two chairs are looking to the user in the same direction. One of the main contributions of this paper is to implement everything with a standalone headset without relying on any external trackers or eye trackers. So we used the MetaQuest Pro, and everything was implemented in Unity. In order to detect saccades, we relied on the infrared cameras in the MetaQuest Pro, from which we can compute the angular velocity of the eyes, and if they exceed a certain threshold, that counts as a saccade. Similarly, we also utilize the blend shapes from the headset, and if the value of the eyes are closer to 1, that counts as a blink. For translation gain, we relied on ARC, which is alignment-based redirection controller, that decides the value of the translation gain based on distances using ray casting. So if the virtual distance ended up being bigger, we apply max. If not, then we apply minimum gain. This is as opposed to the original reactive alignment, where they only utilized the result, they only apply translation gain if the user's direction was opposite to the resultant vector. For rotation gain, it was always used in a way to minimize delta M. So we always apply, we always rotate the environment in direction of delta M to minimize the distance between the two targets. So again, this is how it looks like, and our main modifications were in the rotation gain and the translation gain. Curvature gain still relied on the resultant vector from the negative gradient, and in parallel, the saccadic redirection was running in order to reduce the alignment, misalignment. So in VR, this is how it looks like. So you can see in the end, the physical chair is highlighted in blue, this one. Okay, so this worked well, but we realized that after fixing the misalignment during redirection, and when the user inevitably hits the physical boundaries and needs a reset, the available resets completely ruined all the alignment we did before the reset. So we implemented a resetting algorithm that prioritizes alignment while redirecting the user back to the physical environment. To test our algorithm, we decided to conduct a user study to test how applicable it is in real life. And we adopted a 2x2 experiment design where you have two levels of redirected walking, so two conditions, original revised, and two difficulty, where easy is delta p 0, hard is delta p greater than 0, not 0. Collected data was physical distance error, angular error between the two targets, resets per path, and average distance between resets. And we recruited 18 participants in our user study. So results have shown that our algorithm performs much better in the easy condition, where 60% of the time users were able to actually sit down on the chair as opposed to the original reactive alignment. However, in the hard condition, in both cases, the angular error was not low enough for the user to be able to sit down. In comparison, this is how it looks like. Right. So of course, there is still limitations to our work. So for example, when the delta p is not initially 0, we found it really hard to minimize it given the nature of redirected walking techniques. Also, in our condition, the users didn't need resets at all, so the effect of resetting on alignment still needs to be tested. And we also plan to compare that with reinforcement-based learning techniques, especially in irregular environments. And that's it. Thank you so much for listening.
Yeah. Thank you for the great talk, Habiba. Is there any question? I think we can get one quick question. If not, yeah, so I have one. So in terms of, since the redirection have some threshold to like change the angles or translation gains, right? So how much it can handle, like in some typical room size, like I don't know, like three by three or something like that. Within that, how much difference that it can match the difference of the chair? So I mean, like, well, like if I'm just walk toward to the chair, and how big difference, how much we can like cover, like I mean, some angular difference, maybe can cover like, I don't know, 3 to 40 degrees, something like that, or have ever yet?
Yes, because you are limited to
The stretch, yeah, 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 yeah.
Yes, so I mean, if you're very close to the chair, there won't be time to like fix it a lot. But there is. So if you're a bit far from the chair, there won't be time to. Sorry, if you're close to the chair, there won't be time to fix it a lot. But if you have some distance, then yes. So if the physical environment is too small, like 3 by 3, that would be a bit complicated.
I think it's also going to be really interesting if you can combine with some like predicting the intent to sit on the chair or something like that, because I saw like there's only one chair in this condition, in this experiment, right?
Yes, because we were focused on fixing the alignment between the chairs. So the instruction in the user study was specifically just to walk towards the chair and sit down to see if it would work or not.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so good morning, everyone. My name is Pochon Kim. I'm a second-year master's student from HCI's lab at GIST, and today I'll be presenting my work titled Defying Gravity Towards Gravitory Inertial Retargeting for Virtual Vertical Motion and in-car VR. Now, as all of you may be familiar, the utilization of virtual reality is expanding from the comfort of our own homes to more dynamic spaces such as outdoors or in vehicles. And VR for passengers in cars, in particular, provides a unique challenge in that the environment itself is moving constantly, and studies have aimed to integrate this dynamic aspect of physical motion into VR applications. Now, this is a video for Holoride from Audi, depicting a commercial application of in-car VR. And you may notice that within the virtual environment, the user is situated in a virtual vehicle that moves synchronously to the real vehicle. That is, when the actual vehicle turns or stops, the virtual vehicle does as well. This synchronization of motion is a method aimed to minimize sensory mismatch, simultaneously reducing motion sickness and improving immersion. And ever since the earliest works from in-car VR has proposed the concept, it has long since become a staple of in-car VR research spanning across entertainment and productivity applications. However, this method comes with a significant trade-off. Because virtual self-motion is completely dictated by the motion of the real vehicle, which the passenger can obviously not control, there are inherent limitations in the possible applications that can be developed regarding self-motion. As such, the recent direction of in-car VR research is trending towards expanding the potential applications of self-motion while still maintaining usability, such as through applying redirected gains, such as these studies from the University of Glasgow, or enabling user-applied locomotion for a wider range of motion, which was a previous study done by yours truly. And in this study, we continue this trend by focusing on a specific and novel aspect of motion, which would be vertical motion. The majority of real driving situations consist of minimal to no vertical motion, unless the car is driving in steep hills or slopes. And thus, the synchronization method I've talked about before does not allow for implemented vertical motion, even though it may be plausible for many previous applications, such as flight or underwater traversal. As such, we propose that we can implement virtual vertical motion even in the absence of actual vertical motion of the vehicle. This paves the way for applications that expand beyond the horizontal plane, such as flight simulation, roller coasters, with corresponding physical sensations of verticality. Now, our method was inspired by concepts such as the stomatographic illusion, a phenomenon experienced by airline pilots where accelerations are misinterpreted as changes in vertical tilt, as well as the technique of tilt coordination, which is used in motion cueing algorithms of motion platforms that simulate accelerations through changing the physical pitch of the user. Our method is essentially an inversion of this concept of tilt coordination. Instead of simulating acceleration through actuated tilt of the platform, we utilize the naturally occurring forward acceleration of the vehicle to simulate vertical pitch changes. This would be the basic formula for implementing this concept. The virtual pitch angle is derived from the acceleration component of the vehicle, the gravitational constant, as well as reflecting the actual vehicle pitch angle to account for when the car is traversing in uphill or downhill roads. The acceleration and rotation of the vehicle are sensed through an onboard module consisting of a dedicated GPS and IMU, which transfers high frequency and low latency data to calculate the applied vertical tilt. This formula provides the foundation behind the generation of shifting pitch and consequent vertical motion. When the car accelerates forward, we are pushed back to our seats, which can correspond to virtual upward tilt, while deceleration causes us to be pushed forward in our seats, which corresponds with virtual downward tilt. These changes in upward and downward pitch naturally translate into perceived vertical motion, so that essentially the user is moving up and down at a constant velocity while the car is accelerating or decelerating forward without moving up and down. Now, you may have caught that I haven't yet explained the variable in the formula, which would be K, which is the applied gain factor, which has the ability to increase or decrease the level of virtual tilt in respect to the actual acceleration of the vehicle. A gain of 1 represents the theoretical ground truth in which no additional gain is applied, while increasing or decreasing the gain leads to more or less virtual tilt, respectively. In our study, we first aimed to find the empirically optimal gain with highest perceptual correlation through a separate user study. As such, we proceeded with experiment 1, or E1, in a controlled driving route with repetitive acceleration-deceleration segments. For evaluation, we use ZEST, an adaptive Bayesian staircase method with repeated trials, which update the next applied gain and cumulative estimate from the posterior distribution. And we also applied a dynamic termination criteria in which trials are repeated until suitable convergence. And we proceeded with separate trial sessions for acceleration and deceleration, respectively, to examine the difference in perceptual gains. We proceeded with this experiment in a simple virtual environment as shown in this example video, where participants would experience various degrees of vertical motion through gains adjusted by the ZEST algorithm. The representation of converging gain values per participants, as well as the final results of the experiment, is shown here. And we found that the optimal gains ranged from around 2 to 2.5 times the amount of virtual tilt compared to the physical force. And we also found a significant difference in perceived gains between acceleration and deceleration, with the former requiring more visual exaggeration than the latter. For experiment 2, we wanted to apply these derived gains in an ecologically valid setting, where the vehicle moves along a driving route with multiple accelerations, stops at intersections, and turns. And the virtual contents consisted of a more realistic flight simulation traversing through various virtual environments for a more detailed examination of user experience in an actual application scenario. The research questions for this experiment would be as follows. First, how does the incorporation of virtual vertical motion compared to its absence affect user experience? Second, how does synchronizing virtual vertical motion with the real world influence perception of vehicle acceleration? And finally, what perceptual differences arise between using an empirically determined optimal gain from E1 versus a theoretically valid gain for vertical motion? To answer RQ1, we included a baseline condition with no vertical motion, an asynchronous condition where vertical motion is applied randomly to answer RQ2, and a theoretical condition with a gain value of 1 or no gain at all to answer RQ3, along with the optimal condition with the empirically derived gains from E1. We applied the SSQ to measure motion sickness levels before and after trials, the IPQ to measure presence, enjoyment and preference scores for subjective perspective, along with some qualitative post-experiment interviews. The virtual contents consisted of the user as a passenger in a plane, traversing through multiple environments, with vertical motion applied for accelerations and synchronized turns with the virtual vehicle. The results were as follows. For both motion sickness and discomfort levels, the asynchronous condition showed a significant spike in motion sickness and discomfort, confirming the importance of visuovestibular and kinesthetic alignment in accordance to vehicle motion. And we also found that even with exaggerated gains of the optimal condition, effects on sickness and discomfort were minimal, which showed that the optimal gains stayed within the threshold of usability. In terms of presence and enjoyment, the theoretical and optimal conditions showed significantly higher scores compared to the baseline and asynchronous. And although optimal gains did not show a significant improvement in presence compared to theoretical, users found the optimal to be more enjoyable and preferable, likely due to its higher correlation with the virtual context of simulated flight. Importantly, users reported that applied vertical motion improved user experience while not sacrificing discomfort or presence. Well, these results demonstrate that our method of gravito-inertial retargeting was able to expand the range of potential self-motion while maintaining usability. And by utilizing the sensory ambiguity between inertial and gravitational forces, we were able to utilize vehicle motion in a unique way as to widen the possibility of immersive in-car VR content beyond what is physically presented by the vehicle. And although I would love to go further into more details, I'll need to conclude the presentation here. and I'll be happy to take any questions. And also, I'm in the market for PhD applications this cycle, so please feel free to connect. Thank you.
Thank you for the great presentation. And is there any questions? So I have one question. So is that like there's a significant difference in the accelerating and decelerating the value? What do you think the reason of it?
So I think you're talking about the gains,
Yes.
the different gains, right? So this was quite interesting, but it's very well known in like studies in like flight or flight simulation, where like the optical sense are more sensitive to downward motion compared to upward motion, and also like when we pitch downward, there's this subjective feeling of dropping, which incites more like sensitivity to that particular sensation, because it has to do with some subjective like levels of fear or the sensation of dropping. So I think those kind of references could explain why acceleration needs more gains to match the visual sensation with the actual physical sensation of the vehicle.
Thank you. Any other questions? If not, yeah, give a big hand to the presenter.
Good morning, everyone. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity. I'm present my paper. It's MR-COCO, an open testbed mixed reality for collocation couple, product configuration, and decision making for sailboat case study. Customization is a key value for customers, particularly for the complex products such as car or boat. And while the existing MR configurator are useful, but the knowledge available is limited. Furthermore, that for product configuration is in collocated couples, like two users go to the shop and buy something. And it's a common practice to make every day, but in the everyday life, but has been unexplored in literature. A true product configuration exists both the commercial, like in literature, and but not focus on collocated couples. Extrinsic configuration mainly focus on customer-sellers interaction or support a remote user, but there is a lack of concrete user test data or no open test bed are available or comparative studies. The methodology was designed that implement product configuration for collocated couples featuring a shared and a natural user interface that with the validation was carried out through about case study involving a complex product, in this case a boat, and in purchase context. The methodologies that is include the creation of the shared workspace with easy access to product models and intuitive interactions. MR-COCO is a MR application designed to support in the decision making and configuration for collocation couples. And the application in various scenarios, such as automotive, luxury, aerospace, or both. The system was designed to be easy to use and promote visual communication between participants, and fostering co-presence and natural interaction through the voice and gestures. The hardware setups include two notebooks and connected by internet, and two MetaQuest 3 headset, and a physical desk at least 3 for 1 meters. And the software included is the using Unity and Photon Pan for the connection for the streaming, and then support the shared 3D product model spatial anchoring. This setup is allowed to user to view the interact with the product and configuration in real time, providing the seamless experience. And this MR-COCO is focused with 3 fundamental features. The first one is the shared 3D product model, and then it's a possibility to visible and accessible the both user. It's with the shared spatial anchoring that is made for the modeling and update in real time for the both participant. The model can be scaled and repositioned, improved the perspective, and facilitating discussion and enhancing the decision-making process. The second one is the shared UI that is visible and accessible for both the participant, and then it's made by a hierarchical menu, and then it's selecting the product categories, like materials, and then preview the ability from the hidden selection, like the inside from in this case of the boat, and then it's a more detailed product configuration. The interface supports the collaboration by clearly displaying each participant choices and facilitating communication. The last one is a natural hand interaction, and so through the gesture to ability to using the 3D drag and drop functionality with the user pitch the spheres, and then with these features visible, and also participant to engage discussion, remember chains, and the interaction is intuitive for not a VR expert, reducing the complexity in game controllers and enhancing the user experience. The framework is easy to use and replicable, and the researcher can click get started from the with instruction. It's needed from a repository GitHub. So imported 3D product model, modify the UI, and improving with the prefabs. The setup is straightforward, allowing even tools with the little technical experience with getting started quickly. The case studies we choose that we conducting this collaboration with Italian shipyard specializing in carbon fiber boats, and the configuration allows user to customize various components of the boat, including the exteriors, interiors, and some accessories. In this case studies involving in wide range of materials, furniture, and sailing gears, and testing the system ability to handle high-end products and customization. To main research we define three. This first one is does MRCOCO support the collocation couple collaboration? The second one is does MRCOCO improve the couple decision making? And the last one is MRCOCO is easy to use, but this question is crucial for understanding as the system effectiveness and usability by enhancing collaboration in shared decision making. About the participant, we are recruiting via mailing list from the student university, from purchasing couple, friends, colleagues, or partners. We collect 48 participants and divided in 24 couples, and average age is 27. And this participant, 32 participants had prior experience with the MR application, and either 18% is using one-time MR application before. The experimental procedures is involving in couples configuration like the virtual boat, and selecting components from various categories. Each couples working together to complex the task is with an average completion time of 20 minutes. The system guiding participants through the configuration process, allowing the real-time interaction and decision making. For the experiment, we select both objective and subjective metrics to evaluate the system. From objective metrics, the task completion time, measuring how long each couple takes configuration for the product. And from the subjective metrics, like using the couple configuration questionnaire, is a custom questionnaire made from these existing co-present questionnaires that includes terms like the configuration, and then system usability scale to assess the perceived usability of MRCOCO. And the last one is open feedback that to give to participants to ask some quality feedback like sharing the impression, difficulties, suggestion to improve. This combination allows to us capture both performance and user experience complexity. Starting from the CCQ, the results from the collaboration harmony selection showed is with the ISCOR indicated strong rapport with the co-presence harmony and participant. This suggests that is a participants that felt comfortable and engaged with each other during the process. And then the awareness and communication section, we received the high score demonstrating a strong level of interpretation and each partner's gestures and no verbal cues. which is essential for a successful collaboration and configuration process. The final decision collaboration, section show a high level and agreement of final choices and overall satisfaction with the collaborative process. With this indicate a strong alignment between participants and teamwork. This result suggests this participants were highly engaged in decision-making process and felt confident in decision as a couple. About the system usability scale, that we have a score like 79% is considered like good, and then it's indicate like this application is generally perceived like usable. But however, this some experience in MR encountered some initial difficulties with gesture or navigation through the interface, and novel feedback highlighted strengths in real-time collaboration. To resume the feedback by the user, we indicate the strength like the real-time collaboration, immersive, but it suggests like it's not standalone preview but action, improve the feedback, create a different navigation, and create an avatar because they didn't see the face of the user because they have a headset. The CCQ results support the hypothesis of the collocation, improve the collaboration, the communication, and while MRCOCO enhanced the decision-making process. However, the system has some limitation like the interaction and technical issue related to overlap the 3D models and with the physical user. And we made future works like to implement, improve the gesture interaction, implement the avatar, and implement the virtual assistant. Then is to conclude, MRCOCO is fill a gap between literature to providing open configurable testbed in mixed reality for product configuration. That the system is a key enabler for advancing MR research and develop in offering a modular design that adapt to the various industrial application and enhancing collaborative decision making and co-presence. That providing significant impact of the design and of personalized experience for collocated user. Thanks for attention.
Thank you for the presentation. Is there any question? If not, I have one. So this experiment was conducted with a couple, right? Is there any? I saw there's like 8 male, female, female.
Okay.
Is there any difference?
Yeah,
between that groups?
it's not explained, but when I made, thanks for the question, that when I made this experiment, I prefer to use that male, 3 different groups, male, female, and male, female. That to say, okay, in this case, in this way, I have a possibility to view the different possibility to every users, and then receive the better feedback. Because I received the different performance that and then decision-making process by different user and different couples.
Is there any difference between
I see, yeah, I
groups
see
or-
some differences, but I think that the results can make some like a sexist problems that because that some user like male is both performance than female. It's not it's a bit tricky, but I don't want to explain that.
Is there any other question, comments? Yeah, if not, yeah, let's give a big hand again, and I'm gonna end this session.